of comfort. A bit of comfort is always good, especially when you're dealing with a lot of heavy emotions. Wow, my neck is so stiff. I mean, like, super stiff. 68 super crew. And that's just, one of the things that are stiff. Wow. Yeah, really. I mean, if you're so stiff, when you're so stiff, I mean, as stiff as I am, as stiff as I'm feeling, then, phew. Sometimes you have no idea how to even deal with that anymore. Because when you're so stiff, as stiff as I am, right? You just say, ha! I mean, that's a really tough one. And you're probably even stiffer than I am. Because I just did that crazy dance video. I had no idea all this power was coming out of me. So much for saying, masturbation only makes you weak. Because for some reason, I did still masturbate. I didn't watch porn anymore though, but I did still masturbate. But I still had all this strength, right? I mean, despite the fact that I've been masturbating since the age of 16, I have created all this content, right? So I think a lot of people, they think there's something really wrong with masturbation. I don't know. I mean, all I can say is that it has helped me. And I think it's still better to masturbate than to go around shooting people, right? Because I think there's something that we can all agree on, and that is that masturbation is a method to work with frustration. And we're all very frustrated. I mean, it's not just you, right? I mean, you're frustrated because the people that came before you were probably already frustrated. And lower back. Most people have an issue with their lower back. Most people. Wow. Most people, literally, I don't know if there's actually people who don't have an issue with it. And when they don't have, you see, I don't really understand. I've said that already in another video, but I just, I'm trying to understand these things, how emotions work, right? I'm dealing quite a lot with, I'm dealing quite heavily with shame. Not really that I'm super ashamed, but there is something about shame that I'm working on. And the root of shame, right? And shame is often, it's not so much that we walk around feeling ashamed all the time. Often it's that other people try to make us feel ashamed, right? Sometimes you do something and it was an honest move, right? Sometimes you have an emotion and that just wants to come out, and then you let that out, and then other people come and they say, you should be ashamed of yourself. And then you say, oh, okay, I'm super ashamed now. So in a way, shame is just something. It's not real. I mean, shame doesn't really exist. So it is something that we create for ourselves. It's a mindset, right? It's an opinion. Oh, this is bad, right? I did this, that's very bad. You should be ashamed of yourself. Who says that? Like, who says that? Do I say that? No, other people say that. And why do they say it? Because, people said it to them before. But who started it, right? Who even came up with the word shame, right? Probably somebody that wanted to feel really superior about others. And then he just said, You should be ashamed of yourself. Shame, yeah? What a shame. We also say that. What a shame. So maybe before I start diving into this, yeah, I already started diving. All the time diving, right? It's like diving for emotions. You know, I sometimes feel like I'm a diver and I have goggles on. Only instead of being somewhere else, I'm just diving on the inside. You know, sometimes I really sit like this. You know, I sit and I don't look at anything. You know, I don't focus on my hand. I don't focus on anything. My eyes go out of focus, and I just look somewhere else. And Ramdas said, he says something about, you know, he says it about himself, or eyes that are tuned to other planes of consciousness. So I can literally see through different layers, right? You know, I can see through different layers of reality. And I believe that what is actually doing that is my third eye. And I've done a lot of cleansing on that. Tamarind is supposed to cleanse the third eye because it decalcifies it. And some things that actually calcify your pineal gland, which is said to be connected to the third eye and clarity of vision. You know, this is where you gather insights. This is where you gather visions. You know, this is something that's just open, that gives you the observer perspective and stuff, right? That's the third eye to me, right? This is how I understand it. I go a lot about intuition and feeling, and then I gather insights as I go. So I have an interest that my third eye is like super accurate, you know, that it just does what it does, which is just pick up things, right? So if sometimes I walk around and I see some kind of weird shape walking around, well, what is that, right? I don't know, you know, but I know there's something weird here. So I have to do some cleaning, right? If I sit in my room at home alone and I feel paranoid, then what does that mean? Well, you can just, you know, always go to the simplest thing you can think of. You know, you don't have to think about demons, you know, or jinns, or, you know, you don't have to go in that direction, right? These things might exist. And sometimes I have the feeling I have seen them, because where do my images come from, right? So yeah, it's possible that these things exist. And these things might even be torturing us, right? If you have a topic, an emotional topic, an emotional energetic blockage of shame down in your root chakra, because of something that has happened, you know, you got spanked by your parents, that's shame, right? They're shaming you. You know, just a clap on the butt, that can already create a blockage. It's pain, right? You're not supposed to get hit on the butt as a child. But I had that, and that can literally cause shame. It's a blockage. It's an emotional pain, it's a wound. And that starts oozing and festering, right? And that can have all kinds of problems, you know, like excessive wish for sexuality, you know, that you just want to have sex all the time. Because you want healing, but you can't get healing from one night stands. So you need a stable, wholesome relationship. And that's very hard to find. So, you know, just do your own homework first, right? You know, that's my message. Do your own work first. Do your own work before you become a father. Do your own emotional lifting, right? Learn to first manifest who you really are. Because what is manifestation, right? You have an idea. You have a fantasy. This is how I could be, right? You see Wim Hof swimming through ice and you think, I wish I would be like that. You know, stop wishing. Start working towards it, right? You have a goal. You have a vision. This is how I want to be like. I want to be strong. I want to be a man. I want to be like that guy, right? I want to stand. You know, I want to be tough. I want to be strong. I want to be whole. I want to know how to be true to myself, right? I want to know how to be respectful towards women and stuff, right? I don't want to be such an asshole anymore, right? I don't want to sit around at home and masturbate and watch porn and then hate myself. You know, I want to break out of this cycle. Because what we're really doing is you're just constantly shaming yourself. You know, because somebody once shamed you, because a child generally has no shame. A child has no shame. But other people give the child shame. And they do that so that they can feel better. So now you can ask yourself the question whether or not everybody is an asshole except for you. And the truth is, as I see it, well, your parents couldn't have given you shame if they wouldn't have had sex. And you wouldn't have come out of this. Am I right? So your parents are responsible that you are alive, partly, right? Partly. But if they wouldn't have come together and had sex, you couldn't be here at all. You couldn't even complain about anything, right? So your ability to complain comes also from your parents, right? Partly. So what we have to understand is, as humans, that when you come into this world, some people say it's like a karmic package, right? You have certain things that you have to deal with. You come into this world and there's a certain set of variables. Your father is a certain way, your mother is a certain way. Your family, might be really happy, right? I mean, I have heard of families. And the daughter was saying, and she was my age, and she said, oh yeah, on this weekend we're gonna have a mushroom ceremony with my family. It's like, what? Impossible from my perspective, would never happen. I also wouldn't really want it because it just would go crazy. Like nobody is just, I think, it would be nuts. When I just look at the kind of trauma that's in the family, I can take care of this. I don't have to give other people mushrooms. I can deal with these things. I work it out for myself because I have been given this as homework. And that's the karmic package. I don't know what karma is, if karma exists. There's people that say something about karma. I don't know, right? I can just work with what I feel seems okay, right? And whether or not karma exists, whether or not reincarnation exists, I can't really tell, right? Yeah, I've had déjà vus, right? Sometimes I can see myself in other people, yeah? Sometimes I can even imagine being other people, right? But generally, all I know is this is me now, right? This is me now, and I have to deal with my life. This is also part of being in the here and now. What does it matter if I look for who was I, 500 centuries ago? It doesn't matter, because I have to know who I am now, right? And I have to, okay, if I could think, oh, maybe 500 centuries ago I was a really incredible warrior guy, well then, maybe you can try to become that again, but you don't have much to work with. So, I just try to work with what I have available. And what I have available is heaviness, yeah? I had this all my life, and now I'm starting to come out of it. Because I did a lot of work, spiritual work, yeah? Sadhana, cleansing, and all that kind of stuff. Purification exercise. And a lot of the things that we are dealing with is basically fear. And fear is also one of the emotions that are generally connected with the root chakra, yeah? And so is shame. And so what is this shame? So we talk about in Germany, we call the area of the pubic hair, we call that Schamhaar. It's like shame hair. And the general area, like the crotch, is called Schambereich, which is called the shame area. So Germans are very ashamed to be naked. So we basically live in shame. All of us. Not just the Germans. And we go so far, we are so ashamed that we even start cutting away our pubic hair. There's a reason why we do that, of course. Why are we all so ashamed for? Well, this is Germany, right? I don't know from what country you are, but your country will have its own history of shame. And you have to do your own research on that. In Germany, it's quite obvious. The Nazis, right? Hitler, the Jews. Yeah? So I don't have to look very far, because it's also not that long ago. So it might be that in your family, there's a history of shame. And the way that works, it's just being carried on. It's like you're taking a pebble, yeah? A really nice pebble. And then you go to a lake, whoosh, and you flinch it. Or skip it, I think it's called, right? Yeah? So shame also has a certain force. The Second World War had a certain force. You throw the stone and the stone represents the Second World War. And that means the shame of what has happened in the Second World War, right? That kind of reverberates into the future. So, what they did back then in the 1930s or something still has an impact today on me. And all I can do is to work with that. So how does that, how does Second World War impact me specifically? Yeah, first of all, without World War II, I wouldn't even have been born. So that's a huge impact. Because if Hitler wouldn't have, it's not Hitler, right? You could say Germany. But yeah, other people also allowed it to happen, right? So basically the whole world did whatever happened in Germany. But it's us that have to carry the shame, yeah? And every country also keeps reminding us, you did this! Let go, people, we're over this. It's just how it is. It's like having a fight with your partner and then constantly rubbing it under their noses. You did this! Yeah, I'm very good at that as well, okay? I like to hold on to these things because it makes me feel powerful, and that's the point, right? You want to feel powerful. So if other people shame you, they try to, dump something, they try to dump shit onto you. So they feel terrible today. It's like, I don't know, maybe they're afraid or something, then they go to you and say, but your people killed people. Yeah, and so did yours. Like, everybody's people killed people at one point. Nobody's free from that. Also, there is no real Germany. If you think about it, who really originally always has been here? If you would track it down to maybe 5,000 years ago, who was here? Who was really here? And then who came here? And then who else came? So you can't really say, your people, because all people are your people. Because everybody's somehow connected in some kind of very random way, I believe. So then you could ask yourself, what's incest? But I think, incest is generally having sex in your own family, and I think it's a bad thing because if we talk about this kind of karmic package, I don't know, there's something about that. I don't really understand that, why it's a bad thing. Probably also has to do with shame or, I don't know. Because there's people that marry their cousins, right? Why is that bad? I don't know. I can't really say why that's bad. It's a little difficult to understand that. Why it's bad. So maybe there is some kind of karma and maybe there are rules of what is okay and what is not. But nobody here knows any of that, right? So I listen to Ramdas because he talks a lot about this stuff. How to purify. How to do these kinds of things. He talks a lot about this. How to purify and how to work with these things. I'm not an expert in this. I just go by emotions, by experience. So the way I feel about shame is that generally shame is something that you get from other people. Other people tell you you should be ashamed of yourself. Or they shame you by hitting you or something, right? It feels. It's like somebody spits in your face. It's genuinely, shame is like trying to push somebody down. And yeah, I have my own history of shame. And so did my parents and their parents. Yeah, you've been sent to war. You had to kill people. It's like my grandfathers, they went to war. They probably killed, I don't know. They could never really talk this out because their wives didn't want to hear any of it. And there was no support group for this because Germany was shattered. Everybody was emotionally in shock. Like, holy crap, what did we just do? Like, we just killed millions of people, and yes, some people maybe didn't really know it, right? I mean, somebody comes, and then, you know, all the politicians here, basically, all the politicians. I mean, it's not just Hitler. You can't just say it was Hitler. You know, it was, maybe Hitler had an idea, but everybody else helped him. I mean, he didn't make all these weapons. He didn't make all these things, right? It wasn't just his idea. There was a whole bunch of sick people working together to do this. I mean, you hear of, like, Dr. Mengele, who did these sick experiments, and they said, yeah, it helped science to understand something about pregnancy. Yeah, what? You still use that stuff? You should burn it. You should burn it. Why do you hang on to that knowledge? You should burn this. Yeah, science is really, like, they lost it. Anyway. So you have to understand, you know, just speaking for Germany, you suddenly realize, my God, we did this. Like, we did this. I helped with that. I helped with that. You know, not me specifically, but, you know, that's what Germany is like. That's the shame of Germany. We helped kill millions of people in a very, very efficient way. And that's, you know, the Nazi ideal. It's not just the Nazis here. That's the type of way to think, right? And so explain to me how we can manage to do the same thing to animals and think it's okay. Yeah? So if you eat animals, you're basically, I mean, this is shame right there. Because a part of you knows what you're eating. But because you're already so ashamed that you're eating this, you can't get out of it anymore. Oh yeah, you can. You could make a decision and you could say, I will stop eating this. Because as long as you will eat this meat that's been produced in such a way that defies all empathy, all ideals that we should have as humans. Because what the meat industry is doing is nothing else than what the Nazis have done. And we like to say, yeah, we're humans and these are just animals, but animals are living beings. And if I don't spend time with my dog, then my dog will feel very sad. Because my dog is a living being. And we have to start treating each other as living beings and animals. But the problem is if you're stuck in shame, right? I mean, we have to live with the shame as humanity that we're destroying the whole planet. Yeah, it's the topic of shame, my friend. Because we're like angry children. Yeah, had you ever had thrown a tantrum as a child or even as an adult? And you get really angry, and you're so angry and you break something, or you punch somebody in the face, or you spit, or you say really mean things. Afterwards, you're ashamed, right? So shame is something you get from the outside, but not only. It's something also that can reflect back on you. You know, you can see your own shame. You know, if you treat somebody in such a way, you can feel ashamed. So, you see, I'm just trying to discuss the topic of shame, right? What is shame? Because it's really hard to use words and pinpoint it. Like if I see it, I can probably name it or point it out. But, you know, it's a very wide array of things that connect to shame. And I've never really made the connection between mass production and shame. But there's a reason I stopped eating meat. Because I believe there's a lot of shame connected to that. And I just put a word to it now. But before I put a word to it, it was a feeling. And the feeling was, man, this is just wrong. Who said that? It's from a movie. Oh yeah. Avatar. Anyway, so sometimes we look down on others, we try to shame them. So you have to learn to stand above these kinds of things. You know, you can, if somebody tries to shame you, if that touches you because you're depending on other people's love, you know, because you're afraid to be rejected, really, you can learn to deal with that. Like, I've learned to deal with it. I mean, I can openly stand here and say, hey, I just masturbated. I'm not going to show you how I masturbate, but I stand above my own shame. That doesn't mean, you know, I'm looking down on others, but I'm also, you know, I'm not looking down on myself, because I know why I masturbate. Because I'm frustrated, I'm longing for a woman. So yeah, sure, sometimes I masturbate. And so, you know, what's so bad about it? I think the real problem lies in how we deal with shame in general. Because shame is a feeling. But what it should tell us is more like, oh wow, this is how shame feels like. Maybe I should rather avoid that, right? Maybe I should rather stop doing the things that make me feel ashamed. And the problem is often how we judge these emotions. We say shame is bad, yeah? Shame is bad. Bad shame, yeah? Shame on you. Yeah, you know, shame. What a shame, yeah? I don't know, sometimes we say it very casually. You know, almost has like a loose feeling. Yeah, what a shame. The bus didn't come or something. What a shame it's raining today. We could have gone hiking. So let's, I don't know, eat cake and watch a movie. Or maybe do some crochet or some pottery. You know, I feel obligated to wear this hat because it's part of the Mad Hatter talks, right? But sometimes these hats really annoy me. So now I wear it like this, but I have to say it's a little bit uncomfortable. Maybe I should just turn it around. And then I wear it like this. Oh yeah. Ah, you like this one. Yeah, see, sometimes we also feel ashamed if we act overly cool. See, I don't really know why. Maybe it is connected to fear after all. I think I often felt ashamed when I thought I was doing something that's out of place, right? It's like, as a child, I often, when I wanted to say something, I got a really red head. And it's probably because I was full of shame, or I generally felt ashamed of who I was, because I have been shamed a lot as a child. Right? You know, I would sit with my parents, watch a movie, and I would start crying because there was something that just shocked me, and they would send me to my room. As a child, you know, you get sent to your room, you have to sit with these emotions, you feel ashamed of crying. And not that I really have to cry all the time, but I sometimes did as a child, and then you're just being sent to your room. It's like, leave, you're disturbing us, right? You feel like you're inadequate. You feel like you're different than you're supposed to be. You feel like you should be different, right? I always thought I have to be different somehow. Wow. And so yeah, I sometimes also got spanked as a child, not that often, but I did get spanked. I was often told to be quiet, right? It's like, no, you are born as a child, and I see it sometimes, right? You just want to be happy. Yeah, you want to run around, you want to spread happiness, you want to make experiences and live life like to the fullest, right? Yeah! You know, children are beings of light. And now you have to understand how this kind of karma and, you know, how the pebble, you know, keeps skipping into the future, and how maybe you have to pick it up one day to bury it somewhere and let go of it. Otherwise, it's just going to keep skipping, right? Until eternity. It kind of works like that. So you are being born as a child, and now, you know, I'm just going to stick with the topic of Germany because that's fairly easy to understand, right? You have to look at your own history to understand what kind of topics of shame and fear and hatred, you know, it's like somewhere along your line. I don't think you have to dig very far. Just like, you know, your grandparents are a good way to start. Was there a war in your country? You know, that's like thinking big, right? Okay, from what place did my parents come, right? How did my parents grow up? That's, for me, something very important to understand. Because they were the people that raised me. I didn't know my grandparents. Like, I knew my mothers, but my grandfathers, they already died before I was born, or shortly after. So I had never had grandfathers, because they generally had heart problems, which I also connect to trauma and war and stuff. So also, old people in Germany, they're treated very badly, because some people still connect them to, you helped in the war, right? It's your fault. Sometimes people don't even know that, but it's the general attitude we have towards each other. And so my grandparents were born, and they had these struggles, and there was a lot of like food shortage, and of course the war, and then all the men had to participate in the war. So Germany is also really short on men, right? Which means that we have a lot of fatherless children, and especially also then sons, because who is normally giving stability to a country, to the village, to the tribe? It's the men who hold up the energy and provide strength and security for the women to do what women do and raise children. You know, yeah, to some people that might sound very chauvinistic, but that's just generally how it is, right? Men hold up the power, men hold up the energy, they provide strength and security, and women then, you know, they care more for the children, right? It's like everybody has their job. There's like a kind of a balance, right? Everybody knows their place and everybody does what they're supposed to do, right? If you disagree with it, then maybe you should just look at, you know, indigenous people and how they live, right? And how generally, you know, how the chief is the one who holds up the energy. And if you don't understand this, then you clearly have some research ahead of you to understand what is a natural way of living and how you could live together in a community in a harmonious way. So if you can't do that, because you think you know already how it's supposed to be, yeah, I mean, transgender clearly cannot be the solution, because yeah, we just won't have any children anymore. We just gonna have really confused people that run around, I'm a woman now. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I can't really spend time with you. That's just my opinion, because I'm here to move on, yeah, and to heal, and not to hold on to my trauma and use it to cut away my penis, right? You know, I'm here to be true to myself, and I can never be true to myself if I walk around pretending I'm a woman. Yeah, but I feel like one. But you're still a man. You know, I don't care what you feel like. You have to work with that feeling. You know, if you feel like a woman, although you clearly have a penis hiding inside your pants, then you have to do something about that, or you will turn out like Buffalo Bill. I mean, he wasn't quite sane, was he? But you could see him standing in front of the mirror, you know, putting his junk between his legs, like, I'm a beautiful woman. No, you're not. You're a disgusting man that's been traumatized as a child, yeah, and never found a way to let go of that. Right, and that's basically the story of probably all our parents. Now, I don't know where you come from, but generally that's how it is, right? Children are being born, they have parents. Their parents have already their set of trauma, their set of problems. And the way I see it, we live in a fairly materialistic world where nobody's emotional state matters to anyone, right? So unless you're like collapsing and have a complete breakdown, nobody gives a shit, because we're trying to destroy the planet and, you know, do something with industry and science, right? We are so busy feeling superior that we don't even realize that we're not. Because how can you be superior to nature? I mean, nature is what provides us everything. You know, even the plastic that we use. I mean, everything, even the metal that comes from this, everything comes from nature. You know, we just take it and shape it into something. Yes, but if nature doesn't give anything anymore, we won't have anything. Not even electricity, nothing, right? So that's the general point. To humble ourselves again instead of walking around, because what shame can do, if you feel really ashamed, you try to hold up that image. I did nothing wrong. No, it was the others. Yeah, so you could even say that because Germany did all of this, other countries will also feel ashamed. And why is that? Because they allowed it to happen. Because they knew it was happening. But they waited. They waited. Yeah, they waited. They could have acted before, but they did nothing. So they waited. So one reason why everybody tries to make Germany feel bad about it, it's like sticking their finger into the wound. Why do you have to do that, right? So the point is, right, grandparents, your parents, and then you. So you grow up with parents who had never any way to, they know nothing about spirituality or emotional healing. They don't sit around and meditate and, put their hands on their heart and say, I connect with Mother Nature, thank you for providing me for all this food, right? If I do this around here, people laugh at me. So I just do it silently with myself, right? Because I don't need that. I don't need to be laughed at. So most of my meals I take alone in my room, because I see how I am very much different from everybody else, and I can't explain it to them. Because when I explain it to them, all they do is just but there's no general understanding, because you actually have to open your heart quite a bit. But if you don't outlive your trauma, you can't do that without just having a nervous breakdown. So it takes a lot of courage to go through emotions of shame. And that's what you need. That's basically all there is to it. Because shame is there. Whatever it is, wherever it comes from. There are so many reasons why you could feel ashamed, right? You were in school and you were a young kid, you were open and vulnerable, and it was your first day in school, and you sat there and you're like, wanted to be funny. You wanted to get attention, and your teacher came and smacked you on the head. Or he said, my name, Christopher, be quiet. First year in school. At the end of the first year, I was you could say, troublemaker. I still am, right? I worked myself back to it. Well, that's how I started out. I was quite a troublemaker. But I was being told many times that how I was simply wrong. So they said, you can't be like this. Because I was in school and I was throwing tantrums, I didn't like sitting still. I also didn't want to listen to what they were saying. For whatever reason, right? Maybe I just it didn't interest me. I wanted to do what I'm doing now, just my own thing. Yeah, and so at the end of the first year, they said, well, if you don't start behaving or fitting in, we will put you to a school for special children. And that struck home, right? And from then on, I was very insecure. Because I still was a child. And as a child, you're very vulnerable. So everything that happens in your childhood carries a lot of weight, right? If that would happen now, I would say, that's so what? You want to quiet me down? I'll just leave. Or, I don't know, depending on the situation. Right? You adjust somehow. But the point is, I actually don't know what time it is. Oh. I'm just trying to be a little bit quiet now. Just coming a little closer. So when we're talking about shame in general, I think the only thing you have to understand is that it's mostly your fear that's driving you to do all these things that you're doing. And why I say that is because it's like an amplifier, right? kind of amplifies your shame because you're afraid to have done something wrong. But there is no good or bad. I mean, there is no wrong because what you've done is in the past. It has happened. And that's why what you now have to do is you just have to accept that, right? You simply have to accept this is what I've done, and then you let it go. And it sounds very simple, but it actually takes a lot of work. I mean, I have some topics that took like years to let go of. Things that I was so ashamed of, such as, what I told you about at the age of 3. Or let's say I was 4. My sister was 7, right? And I told you that she had read in a book, in a magazine, about how sex works. She was 7 and I was 4, and we were on holiday. So we slept in the same room, which at home never happened. And she then said, hey, let's try this, right? And we did. But I was 4 and she was 7. But that shame carried a lot of weight, because later on you think, what have we done, right? What have we done? And for her, it was probably even worse because she was the one who suggested it. But what you have to understand is we were children, right? Like, I just didn't know better. And then the question is, of course, why is it bad? Yeah, I don't know. It's just generally considered bad. But we were still just children. And we never talked about it, really. We just kept it kind of secret between us. And every time, sometimes I was even making jokes about it. She was like... So she was very afraid of it. So for her, this shame was very real. And to me, I don't know how it was. I tried opening up about it, but because somebody else was connected to it, it was very hard. And then I remember one time, and I'm just gonna say it, I did psychedelic mushrooms alone in my room. And actually what I wanted to do was I wanted to go out. I thought I want to go out, right? But then I had the feeling, no, you have to do it here. So I just sat down here, I ate them. And then I was sitting here. I had an altar, just some kind of, like a small table. I don't know, you have some, maybe you have a feather or a stone that you like, right? Something that feels good, maybe something from nature. And then a candle or something, right? Like generally I would suggest no mirrors. Just have no mirrors. They're weird. Like, it's best to not look at yourself in a mirror when you're on psychedelics. It's generally better to not really look at yourself in a mirror at all, because it's a fabrication. That's not you. You look in the mirror, that's not you. You take a picture of yourself in a selfie, that's not you, because what you are is a feeling. You are a feeling. And that's why if you look in a mirror and you think, oh yeah, I'm really pretty, you can still feel ugly on the inside, right? I see a lot of young women that look so beautiful, like so beautiful, the most beautiful breasts you could imagine, like such a beautifully shaped body, just like wow. You just see these young women and you think, wow. And they do porn. What does that say? They want love. They have none for themselves. They think they're ugly. So they want people to like them. This is like if you've been raised by parents who had no real love to give you, who barely had enough love for themselves, right? And so sometimes we have to take a few hits within our family or from other people, right? And we have to learn to love them anyway. We also still, we draw our boundaries and we start to adjust a little so that we don't have to suck up to everyone. So we maybe distance ourselves a little. And that's what I do with my family now. I just keep to myself a lot because I realized we're very different. And some things simply change when you get older and you want more time to yourself. And you have to make your own choices, right? Because at one point you want to leave, right? You want to leave the family. You want to go out in the world, have your own family. So you can't always cling to your parents and your brothers and sisters and stuff. That's how I feel. So, shame has nothing to do with I'm sexy or something. It's a feeling. And you can feel very ashamed. So for some people, the fear, right? It's already the idea of having shame is already traumatizing for them, right? Oh my God. Yeah, so I was sitting here and I had just ingested a psychedelic agent. And I was sitting here and I don't know, something happened, sometimes I do this also without psychedelics. I go through something and I came to myself and I had this insight. Go to the living room and watch TV and wait until your mother comes. I was like, God. And then tell her, because the insight was you have to tell her that this happened between you and your sister. All right. So I went to the living room. I put on a fire. It was 2 a.m. All I knew was I'm just going to sit there, and at one point my mother will come out and then I will speak to her. And so I started watching cartoons, like all these old ones, Darkwing Duck and stuff. And I realized, my God, I was watching this as a child. This is terror. This is absolute madness. No wonder I was so confused for so many years. And then the first thing that happened was that my sister came. I heard her coming because she had just gotten the dog. And she left it out in the garden so that it could pee. She could pee, Amy. And I went into the garden and I said to her, listen, I'm going to speak about what happened between us to our parents. And she was like, no, don't do that, don't do that. Why do you have to do it? I said, I've made up my mind I have to do this because it has a severe impact on my sexual life. I had problems as a child also with wetting the bed and stuff, which might actually be the reason. I was often wetting the bed, and I got these weird diapers that as soon as they would get wet, I would wake up because they would make like a really loud beeping sound. And I had it once even at the age of 27 that I peed. I was sleeping at I was with my girlfriend in Maastricht, and we slept at her mother's place. And we slept on a couch, and I woke up. I had a dream of going to the toilet. And I just peed. Yeah, it was a bit awkward. It just happens, right? I don't know, it just happened. I never connected it at that time to anything because I didn't have any idea about emotions and what kind of weight they can carry. And so I said to her, right, this has a severe impact because also I had a severe problem with coming too early. Like really early. As soon as I would be with a woman and we would engage sexually, unless I smoked cannabis, then I could go for hours, but also at one point you just feel nothing anymore. But sometimes I just came in a couple of seconds. Like really weird. So, shame is connected to coming too early. Anyway, so how did I work with that? That was one of the things. By just doing what my heart told me. And so I told her, and she said, I don't understand. And then I just went back, and she went up, back to her room, and I went back to the living room, and I kept watching cartoons. And then my mother came out at one point, and I said, hey, can I talk to you? And she said, yeah, I'll just come back, but, make it quick. And then I told her this, and then she said, and? But you were children, right? But that helped me. That helped me because it took some of the weight off my shoulders. And then my sister was like, whoa, because she was afraid of being judged for that, right? because she was judging herself. And then I said later to her, so what? I told them nothing happened. So she can let go of that as well, right? So sometimes we have to work on a topic for other people, right? Sometimes we have to work on a topic also for other people. So if I go through these emotions, I sometimes even work out stuff from my parents or my grandparents. That's what you may call the karmic package, and which means, this is all stuff that I took up as a child already. The way I've been raised, what I saw in my parents, why they were suffering, all this kind of stuff. And sometimes you pick these things up and you start imitating them. And it starts to shape your life. Because you learn from your parents. Your parents are a certain way, you start being a certain way. Maybe your parents gossip a lot, so you start gossiping a lot. Right? Maybe your parents watch a lot of TV, so you watch a lot of TV. It's the story of my life. Right? They weren't really open-hearted people because they weren't raised by open-hearted people. My parents were raised by people that just came out of war. And so they were raised by alcoholic fathers that were aggressive, by fathers that just sat around saying nothing, right? By people who didn't have much. They just continued. They didn't really have a lot of emotional capacity to sit around comfortably with their children, because the whole country was in a state of shock, right? So Germans in general are very closed off. It's a very harsh background we have here. I think a lot of people have that. Every country is like this. Just look at all kinds of, every country is really weird. All kinds of aggression and stuff. And so it starts somewhere, So this is your job now. This is your homework. Maybe you are as depressed as I was. I was very depressed. But I just started opening up to all of these things. And the way I did it, I started a podcast. And slowly but surely, I started talking about everything that I found in my life. And I just put it in there. And the more I was doing this, the more I realized, wow. And I grew incredibly as a man. And I started to open up more and more also to myself, because I realized nothing happens, right? I faced so much fear, and all that happened was that I just got stronger. I was in Amsterdam, a friend threw me onto the streets, where I thought is my best friend. I came back to my parents, and I live here since 6 years. There's a lot of shame connected to that. But because I lived here, I could learn a lot about my history, how I was raised, right? So I just kept observing my parents, how they treat each other, how they treat others, try to treat me. And I was able to set a lot of boundaries. And that just showed me basically, wow, most of the stuff that I had came from my childhood. And that's the real heavy work. And that took me now, I would say I started really working on this in 2019. This was when it really started. And now I would say I got quite far by being very determined, very, very determined, and letting very few things come in the way of my spiritual healing and emotional healing. Because I said, I'm sick of this. I want to get out of this. So every time I felt depressed, I made something. Right? If I felt really heavy, this was after I came back from Amsterdam. I was so depressed, I thought about killing myself. I wouldn't have done it, I think, right? But I did feel like it, and I told my parents, I said, I have suicidal thoughts. Then my sister came and said, that's selfish. It's wow. I'm really down in the ground. And yeah. Sure, it was selfish, but they couldn't really do anything. So what did I realize? I'm on my own. there's nobody can help me. So I just did my own thing. And the way it started, that was the moment when I told my parents I have suicidal thoughts. And then the only thing, yeah, my dad came and he said, push through. You have to push through. Because they couldn't help me emotionally. The only thing they offered, of course, was to go to therapy, but I knew I didn't want that. I knew I could do this myself much better. So I just kept sitting with my feelings of depression, and one day I started to pick up. Right. And I started drawing. And I started drawing, and I started drawing, and I started drawing. And the results of that are all on Instagram. Some of them are on YouTube. And I just looked at emotions. And everything that wanted to come out, I just drew it. I drew it. Bam, 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 bam. And this is when I first started to come across the idea of the language of emotion and how to express what you feel in different ways. And this is why I'm kind of obsessed with art. Because if I feel a certain way, I make a song. If I feel a certain way, I draw something. If I feel a certain way, I make a video, right? If I feel a certain way, maybe I talk about it. But it's always solution-based, right? If I feel a certain way, I could call that the problem. What's the solution, all right? I cannot stop masturbating or watching porn. What's the solution? Figure out what the root is. What's the root cause? Right? We are in this Western modern civilization society thing. We think, we are very smart because we can cover up our problems, right? By just treating the symptoms, making the symptoms go away, right? You feel terrible, you drink alcohol. Oh, I feel much better now. Yeah. Your body starts to feel like everything's aching. You take an aspirin. Oh, wow. You think you're good now. But everything you did is you just suppressed the feelings. And that's exactly what I stopped doing. I started to allow the feelings to happen. And that's when the depression really kicks in. And then all the emotions you've been trying to push down, a lot of the sickness we see, it's just push down emotions. Most of it, really. Because there's no need to feel like we feel here. The reason why we feel it is because we never allow ourselves to feel anything. So sometimes people see, I feel nothing. But it's not that they feel nothing. It's that I call this emotional constipation. You have so many emotions inside of you. And they keep, you keep pushing them down. And then it's like a compressed lump of emotional weight. And like I said, I've been doing this now. I've really intensely done this for 1.5 years. So since maybe January 2000 it started in 2019. And really intensely since I was back from Amsterdam, which was in December 2021. So I've been now 1.5 years. I started to become creative. And I've done nothing else. Like most of the time that I have been here, I have been alone in my room. I went nowhere. I didn't go anywhere. Sometimes okay, sure. But most of the time I was alone in my room. And I just sat with these feelings and these emotions, and I channeled them into my art. And, I wrote all these books. I made all this art. And this is stuff you can just teach yourself. You just have to pick a method. What do you like doing? Yeah, and if you don't know, then you just look at my content. You just look, just pick something that you like. Do you like drawing? Start drawing. I've made videos where I explain how I do this. They're out there. Pick one out. I've just explained to you, right? I mean, there's the one I did, the last video in the World in Color. It's called Art and Music. Is it that one? Maybe. Yeah, just look at it. You know, you have to do your own digging, because I don't know, I feel like I can't really show you everything. I don't know. I don't really know how far I have to go to help people figure out their own depression, right? You know, I don't know how desperate I am. So the best way for me would be, if you really need help, you can contact me. And you can contact me through YouTube, I believe. It says show email address, right? You can do that. You can contact me through, just send me a message on Instagram. You can ask me, you know, I can help you to figure out what your style is. You know, I would just have a conversation with you. It's probably best, you know, to just do like a Zoom call or something. You know, we don't even have to work with camera, although it probably would be better. Because I don't like, you know, we have to work transparent, right? It doesn't work anymore that people are hiding. We have to come out in the open now, right? We have to see each other. So that's basically what I can tell you, right? You have to open up to whatever happened to you as a child, and then you have to start working with that. And you just pick a method. If you like music, do music. If you like working out, or, you know, yoga or hiking, you know, you just do that. If you like crochet or making collages, or you just figure out your own art form. Because what I did, nobody taught me that, right? The way I make art, nobody taught me that. I just started doing it because of the abilities that I already had. I knew how to take pictures. I knew how to work with the computer. And so I drew something with pencil on paper, and I have a camera, and I started taking pictures, and I put it onto my laptop, and I just started editing them. And that has changed, and by now it's routine. I feel a certain way, I make an image, right? It's like routine, right? Because I still go through emotional processes all the time. As soon as I also engage with other people, there's always emotions, so I deal with them. Yeah, I deal with the stuff that they don't want to look at. I see it in them, and I do something with it. That's just, you know, I just accepted that kind of stuff. This is what a real energy worker does. It's not enough to just say you're an energy worker. There comes a lot of responsibility with that, and that's basically a 24/7 job. You know, that just keeps going. This will never end. You know, why do you think I stay awake at night for hours to work out these things? You know, because I have to. The energy has to flow, and once it flows, you know, if you want to be in a state of flow, if you want to live in a state of flow, whoosh, whoosh, you will become less tired and less tired and less tired, and you will be awake more, and you will be awake more. And then you have to learn to deal with this, so you have to work out. And your body has to become stronger, so I stand a lot. I stand a lot so that my legs are strong, so that I can hold myself up. But I don't want to sit anymore. When I'm tired, I sleep. And sometimes I sleep 3 hours and I wake up and I keep working. And this is how my life is now. And I like it, right? I like it, but it's hard work. Very hard work. But I feel like, you know, it's like I broke through something. Something changed. So sometimes you progress and you don't even realize how much you've progressed until something happens. You know, you have to face a challenge and you realize, wow, I handled that completely different than I used to. And then sometimes you're a bit afraid, because I've never been like this, and now I am. And then you realize, all right, it's just the memory of fear. You know, usually I would have freaked out now, but you know, I'm super calm. So yeah, your feelings of shame are very specific to yourself. If you don't want to ask anyone, you know, you just look at what other people are doing, and you just pick the stuff that you like. You know, what form of exercise do you like? Do you like juggling? You know, what puts a smile on your face when you see other people doing it? You know, you can just watch these Like a Boss compilations and you just pick something. Oh, I like this. You just try, you know, you just try it. But anyway, I think I've said enough. Yeah. Yeah, you'll find a way, I'm sure.